feel like Controversy and Love Island South Africa work so well together.
They're very Caucasian. We're gonna stick to our Caucasian people. And I saw the trailer. I saw the Love Island trailer and all I saw was Caucasians. So you're telling me that you made a Love Island Africa, South Africa, where there's so much diversity, and you're only gonna add white people? And
even shows that you wouldn't really expect black people to participate in, you know, like Fear Factor and Survivor. Even those shows, when they come to Africa, they are more diverse than this, eh?
Love Island SA must be stopped. They must be stopped. And I ain't watched none of it yet. But yeah.
I'm Colin, and this is Lokshin Library.
On February 28, 2021, Love Island South Africa premiered to what seemed like unprecedented backlash for a local adaptation in recent history. The premiere and subsequent episodes featured a litany of technical issues and a cast that did not seem to represent the racial demographics of South Africa. Many argued that all these issues could and should have been avoided considering the extensive past and present discourse pertaining to issues of race and segregation in South Africa, and the fact that some of the crew members that produced the adaptation had prior experience working on others within the Love Island franchise. The UK Love Island revival is now in its 9th season, and it's still been 2 years since that infamous first South African season. With a second not in sight, I thought it would be a good time to investigate why that could be. The Love Island format is owned by ITV Studios and Motion Content Group Limited, and is distributed internationally by ITV Studios Global Entertainment. The current iteration is actually a reboot, or redidgeridoo as the Brits say, of an earlier celebrity cast show of the same name which aired for 2 seasons over 2005 and 2006. Each season of Love Island comprises a group of contestants known as Islanders living together in a villa with various amenities in isolation from the rest of the world. During their stay, Islanders are under constant surveillance by live television cameras as well as personal microphones. Islanders must also couple up among each other, whether it be for love, friends, or money, to remain on the island and eventually win the show. A feat which currently comes with a £50,000 couples cash prize in the United Kingdom, which is now worth about a week's worth of gas, and varies in other countries. Contestants initially couple up by first impressions, and as the show progresses, are given opportunities to recouple, change partners, or remain paired. Islanders who do not manage to form a couple are eliminated or dumped from the villa and replaced by new Islanders. You know what, I'll let one of the hosts explain it in a bit more in detail.
You all know how it works. In order to stay in the villa, you have to remain in a couple. So you can stay in the couple that you're in, or you can couple up with someone else.
During their stay, Islanders can also partake in a series of mental and physical challenges to earn rewards such as dates, sometimes even outside the villa, but still under the surveillance of the production crew. Audience participation is also a crucial engagement component of the contest. A new episode airs every evening, and fans can support their favorite Islanders and couples through a web and smartphone app-based voting system, and the Islanders who secure the least votes run the risk of being dumped. The show has become an unscripted summer juggernaut in the UK since its 2015 rebolicking. In 2018, the Season 3 premiere attracted a record-breaking 4,050,000 viewers, which was the most for not only ITV but also British television history. This leapt to 4.7 million broadcast viewers the following year, with an additional 1.4 million viewers via streaming on other devices. 2019 was also the year the series cornered the 16 to 34-year-old viewing demographic, with more than half its viewers within this range, 58% of which were female, which is considered crucial among advertisers. In a press release following 2019's milestone, Paul Mortimer, the head of digital channels and acquisitions at ITV at the time, said, "Off the back of a record-breaking year, we're delighted to be bringing an extra series of our biggest and sunniest show to the 2020 schedule. Love Island has proven yet again to be the perfect format that engages young audiences." The show's momentum was, however, halted in 2020 by what some claim is a global conspiracy theory, which forced production to cancel plans that year to film the summer series in Mallorca, Spain, and the winter series in Cape Town, South Africa. Over its now 8-year run, Love Island's popularity has generated an almost insatiable local demand, which has been met through numerous spin-offs ranging from recaps and behind-the-scenes clip shows to tell-all episodes, which are now a popular cast reunion format for the franchise. Former Islanders have also had shows dedicated to following their pursuits for love and public careers after their time on the show. To date, almost 30 adaptations of the Love Island format have entered production across the globe. The first was a German version, Love Island, Hyperflirts and Wahre Liebe, followed by others as far-flung as Love Island Australia and America, among others. Speaking to the BBC on the show's popularity, psychotherapist and author Lucy Beresford attributed it in part to the following. The drama Islanders go through, the conflicts they have to navigate, there are things many of us have to navigate ourselves, so it appeals from an educational point of view, but there's also a bit of schadenfreude. Viewers think, oh, thank goodness, we haven't made that much of a mess of some particular situation. And it's also a brilliant way of seeing what not to do. The gaslighting, for instance, by Islanders that has gone on in the last couple of years, that kind of behavior has been called out immediately by other Islanders and audiences. Schadenfreude, however, is not the only compelling aspect to the franchise. As other media critics such as Boris Deschanel have pointed out, there's a sincere expectation among audiences and even Islanders that some of the romance is real and that they will find love over the summer and not just new Instagram followers. So, unlike its contemporaries on other networks such as Too Hot to Handle and Are You the One, Islanders are aware that they are in competition but rarely speak about this aspect during their stay, never mind strategy they may be utilizing. And contestants who in the past have been more cynical, or rather strategic, in their coupling attempts have typically lost popularity and even been voted out shortly after being exposed.
Well, that's the miracle of the franchise. You get all the equipment and know-how you need, plus a familiar brand name people trust. You'll be on a rocket ride to the moon. And while you're there, would you pick up some of that nice green moon money for me? Royce McCutcheon.
No deal, McCutcheon. That moon money is mine.
Television formats such as Love Island are often franchised across the world. The practice, transnational format adaptation, has existed for decades in television, and research suggests it even goes back as far as radio's heyday. It is often considered a safe alternative to original productions, as producers have the benefit of a recognizable and replicable IP that has succeeded in other and sometimes similar markets, in addition to other things the salesman from the Springfield Franchise Expo mentioned just now. A crucial component of adaptations such as these is the industry convention that the licenses to television formats be sold in the form of a production Bible. This Bible functions as a development guide or instruction manual for the production crew, consisting of vital information such as lessons learned, technical requirements, shooting schedules, crew lists, as well as draft and sample budgets to benchmark the new production by. The Bible also can include information that would be of use for studio and network interactions, such as pitching material, ratings, market research, and tips. Licensing may even include oversight from a senior executive from the original series to ensure brand integrity is upheld. Now write that last part down, it will definitely be relevant later. When examining Love Island's spiritual predecessor Big Brother's adaptation in Africa during the 2000s, academic Martin Ngosindlela proposed that localized formats were an aspect of not just the television industry, but of globalization too. Economic reform and market liberalization over the past 3 decades have made the continent a highly sought-after emerging market, where new relationships and multinational collaborative approaches to media production have developed. Given the franchise's popularity on the continent, an adaptation was an inevitability, and at the end of 2020, Love Island officially found its way to Africa, with an announcement in September that a Nigerian adaptation had been commissioned by Digital Play Networks and would air on TVC and 9 Vision Media. This was followed by an announcement in November that same year that the South African TV network Mnet had acquired the rights for an adaptation of its own, which would be produced by Rapid Blue. President of Global Entertainment at ITV Studios at the time said, "The multi-channel phenomenon is having a fantastic year, traveling the world at a rapid pace. We can't wait to see how this local adaptation will find its way to South African viewers." Mnet Rapid Blue were quite possibly the best suited partnership to adapt this format, as they not only had access to the production bible, but both entities had also had direct, extensive and successful experiences with the original format. In a press release announcing Love Island South Africa, Mnet CEO Nkateko Mabaso said the following of the partnership. "This is a continuation of Mnet's strategy to provide premium quality shows in line with global trends. We at Mnet are ecstatic about partnering with ITV Studios and joining this global brand as we launch Love Island South Africa." The original and American versions of Love Island have aired on South African television via Mnet and its digital platforms since 2018. So it was a franchise that local viewers, which Mnet already had access to, were familiar with. Additionally, Rapid Blue had previous success with other foreign format adaptations on Mnet in recent years, such as Dancing with the Stars South Africa, The Bachelor South Africa, and The Bachelorette South Africa. Rapid Blue also had prior experiences with the franchise through the aforementioned Love Island Winter Series and Love Island France, which have been filmed and produced in Cape Town by the local company since 2019. Speaking of Rapid Blue's work on another popular ITV production, ITV Studios Global Entertainment Senior Vice President of Licensing, Pascal Dalton, gave the following glowing recommendation. In South Africa, our international production hub for the ITV format, I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, is managed by the production company Rapid Blue. To date, Denmark, Hungary and Romania have all come through the hub, with all 3 clients expressing their satisfaction at the efficient way in which Rapid Blue manages their production needs. Which is kinder than anything people had to say about disgraced former Health Secretary Matt Hancock's involvement with the show.
And I get that you fell in love, I understand all of those things,
Yeah.
but sorry, for a lot of families, like mine, it doesn't really cut it.
Yeah. Well.
The only equally or better suited pairing would have been between Rapid Blue and Vuzu, another DSTV channel at the time. Vuzu marketed itself as a youth-orientated entertainment channel for young Africans, which specialized in locally produced reality, comedy and drama television series. The decision to air Love Island South Africa on Mnet instead was likely due to the channel's perceived lack of internationality and to push its young demographic to DSTV's premier channel to attract new advertisers and charge them and existing ones a premium for this new and unique opportunity, which is a common tactic used by broadcasters for new formats. This notion was supported by quotes from Mnet employees at the time, such as Tracy Ann van Rooyen, Mnet's head of acquisitions and scheduling, who claimed to have noticed that Love Island tripled Mnet's live viewership ratings in that time slot. Van Rooyen continued, "Right now, as far as formats are concerned, in over 53 countries worldwide, Love Island is it. There was a lot of debate internationally of, is it to this, is it to that, but the fact of the matter is that Love Island is bringing people to Mnet and they are sitting together and watching it." On November 8, 2020, Mnet announced that contestant entries for the show had opened and promotional media encouraging members of the public to enter was deployed via the press and the network's various social media accounts. This material consisted of press releases and this 30-second video titled "Enter to Find Love." It is worth noting that it was during this process where the show received the first bit of public criticism. At the time, members of the public and media critics raised complaints regarding how difficult the Mnet website was to navigate, especially in order to locate the entry form in addition to other technical issues with the application platform. Subsequent promotion of the series was however scarce, especially compared to the volume South African fans of the UK and US versions were accustomed to. Aside from occasional entry reminders on platforms such as Instagram, there were no major announcements or material released until the announcement of the show's host, Afrikaans actress Liani Durant, on January 28, 2021. Leonie was a good host choice. She brought a sultry yet safe for work energy to the set and seemed to have good chemistry with a lot of the islanders. Once again, there was a distinct lack of promotional activity or cast details following the host announcement, until February 28th, the day of the show's premiere. The franchise convention established by the UK series and followed by others regarding promotion would have included the announcement of the series' first round of contestants via social and other media anywhere from a week to 3 weeks, if not more, prior to the premiere, followed by introductory interviews. This is a simple yet effective tactic that builds anticipation, keeps audiences engaged when done well, and primes the audience for the new show's tone and cast. Love Island South Africa flouting this convention and only publicizing cast profiles the evening of the premiere created an uncomfortable silence that would have usually been filled with excited banter on social media. And more detrimentally, gave people nothing but the 2 promotional videos to base their expectations for the new show on, which was significantly different from the end product. To coincide with the show's launch, MultiChoice, Mnet's parent company, had on February 26 announced a new early access feature for DSTV premium subscribers. This feature would allow subscribers to view episodes of Love Island South Africa on their TV or online up to an hour before the usual 9:30 airing. This new feature was likely developed and implemented in order to give younger audience members in this key primetime demographic, who tend to be more online and accustomed to on-demand viewing, an opportunity to view the weekday episodes in a manner and time they are more accustomed to, maximizing the show's ratings and potential revenue. Love Island South Africa eventually premiered on February 28th, and the little anticipation the show had built quickly gave way to exacerbation. Complaints regarding the adaptation began with the show's first real reveal, its set, which was a far cry from the seaside mansion used in the promotional material. Instead, the villa for this season was a sparsely decorated guest house in the Cape Winelands, an agrarian region hundreds of kilometers away from the nearest sea. It was like the UK version moving from Spain to Poland unannounced to save a few pence. The set was designed by local company JD Unlimited and built by its sister company JDM Buildco, which have extensive industry experience between them, including the replication of sets for other formats such as The Voice South Africa. Not only was the Love Island South Africa set seen as visually lackluster by audiences, but its design also failed to adequately accommodate the show's filming needs in certain spaces, which led to numerous instances where crew members and equipment were blatantly visible in broadcast scenes.
You remember what to do, girls. Throw your hands up in the air like you just don't care. There it is.
Woodpick.
They say how well you dance is an indication of how good you are in bed. Bad news, Islanders. Hey, Andy, get out of the way.
The premiere and subsequent episodes were plagued with other production issues. There were numerous instances when audio such as speech and music were missing from scenes, and others where crew members could be heard discussing logistics over the contestants. This would also have medium-term ramifications for the show's story arcs, as cast members would on occasion make remarks and decisions based on discussions that took place during earlier inaudible scenes, which the narrator, local comedian Warren Robinson, could not provide context for.
Look, I'm going to be honest with you guys. Last night some things were said.
Yes, but we were having technical issues and we couldn't hear it.
The decision to use local voice talent also came as a surprise to people familiar with the UK version of the show, especially since other UK adaptations produced by Rapid Blues such as Come Dine With Me SA, which also rely on a particular rapport between the narrator and audience, employ the same voice actors as their UK counterparts. This break with convention would be costly for the adaptation, as Robertson's narration, particularly the tone and humor, was highlighted by viewers on social media and television critics such as Tines Ferreira as one of the premiere's many shortcomings and annoyances.
The boys are ready to have a serious heart-to-heart with their friend about his behavior, surrounded by acres of grapes. It's divine intervention.
Who the fuck wrote this bullshit?
This also aligned with feedback I received at the time from South African and American friends of mine who are fans of the franchise, but were actually turned off by not just the narrator, but also Islanders' local accents in their country's versions.
And this is just us being like boys and kids. We're never going to be like that. We don't want to be those guys that say, okay, do what you want, fucking do what you want, because you are starting to look a dick to the girls.
Which is actually an antithetical response to the typical expectation or pull factor for localizations. Grading and color correction were also lacking, which meant that the show was missing the bright and summer aesthetic the franchise is renowned for, despite being shot during the height of South Africa's summer. As a result of these and other filming gaffes, scenes in some of the show's early episodes began and or ended abruptly, lacked finishing elements such as transitions, and even featured footage that still had editing time codes and countdowns. A review of the show's episode credits conducted during this time and weeks later confirmed that the 300-member original crew was South African, but eventually British crew members were also brought on board, no doubt to help rectify some of these issues and maintain the franchise's brand integrity. At the time, I actually happened to be in the UK and caught a conversation between a BBC radio host as well as a caller who claimed to be calling from the Love Island production suite in Cape Town and essentially bragging to his other colleagues in the UK that he had been seconded for this task, which meant that he was enjoying a paid holiday in South Africa for a good few weeks while the show kind of fixes some of the issues that it was experiencing. Unfortunately, I could not find that recording, so you are just going to have to take my as well as my flatmate at the time's word for it. The premiere trended for all the wrong reasons on Twitter and Facebook, and the press were just as appalled, with Ferreira even calling it atrocious and unacceptable in his review.
A girl like this. When my mother yells at this, it's because she loves me. I was rooting for you. We were all rooting for you. How dare you? Learn something from this.
Issues, however, such as audio, editing, and lighting were overshadowed by outrage regarding the racial representation of the initial 10 Islanders. Before getting into the demographics of the cast though, it seems appropriate to point out that production set themselves up for failure before the first Islander even sashayed into the villa. The 1 month casting window the show opened is just too short for a format in a new territory, especially considering that this was right before the festive season when typically the young demographic they'd be trying to court would most likely be busy wrapping up exams and possibly returning home out of the metropoles for the holidays. And speaking of that specific demo, the show's determination to cast a specific European-influenced aesthetic and physique would only make casting more difficult. Other popular competition shows such as The Voice or X Factor have the benefit of larger prize packages to incentivize applicants, and since entertainers can be found in various shapes and communities, casting can be quicker and easier, but still, even in those circumstances, a month is simply not enough. It's also worth remembering, as it seemed that production didn't, that South Africans are still quite socially conservative. So while a large number may be comfortable watching people across the equator kiss and couple up for 6 to 10 weeks, only a small percentage of that number are prepared to apply to do so themselves, knowing their friends and family will be at home watching every conversation and kink play out.
Okay, first of all, what's your time? What's your time? Let's get it out the way. So you tell us without us telling you, because we've all established.
Okay, so everyone's typical type is like tall, dark.
Love Island made me realize that tall, dark, and handsome does not mean what I thought it meant. It means a tall white guy with a little bit of a tan. Bro, I'm a dark chocolato man. Like, I'm dark. Me compared to a brother with a tan is crazy. So for me, I'm no longer listening out for tall, dark and handsome. I'm listening out for tall, black and handsome.
Of the 10 islanders initially cast, 5 were women and 5 men who paired into 3 white couples, 1 black couple, and 1 colored couple. If there are any Americans watching this, I can say that as I'm 1/18th colored on my mama's side. This cast composition was at odds with public expectations, which were closer aligned with the country's racial makeup, which, according to the published census data at the time, was 76% black, 9% white, 8% colored, 2% Indian, and 0.5% unspecified. As a result, social and traditional media across the globe exploded with outrage at what was perceived as the whitewashing of the South African iteration of the franchise. The situation was also exacerbated by what were perceived as microaggressions against the cast's only black woman at the time, Timna Shoto, such as her name being the only misspelled one in promotional material and it being mispronounced by people such as the series hosts, narrator, and white cast members. In the 24 hours following the premiere, Love Island SA was trending along with other derisive phrases such as Love Island Orania. The official Love Island South Africa Twitter account only had 6,500 followers. However, a tweet with the first photo of the full cast posted on the evening of the premiere was ratioed by over 7,000 quote tweets and over 1,800 replies, which were overwhelmingly critical. And of course, a number of these critical quote tweets and replies in turn received thousands of retweets of their own. The original tweet garnered more than 4 times the engagement of any other social media post across the show's accounts during its 6-week run. The only other post to receive similar levels of interaction was one made the following day on March 1st, announcing that more Black Islanders would join the cast. The announcement of new cast members on March 1st was not without its own controversy, as it featured 4 different close-up images of fit and scantily clad black male and female bodies, suggesting 4 new cast members. However, the images were different angles of just 2 new cast members. These new contestants became known as the Emergency Blacks, a phrase coined in a tweet by South African lifestyle and beauty vlogger Sive Mbono. This phrase once again trended just days later as similar criticism by Black, South African and British Twitter users was leveled against the British royal family. Following the now infamous interview the Duke and Duchess of Sussex had with American talk show host Oprah Winfrey regarding their experience of racism at the hands of the royal family, the Prince and Princess of Wales coincidentally attended a series of publicized events with black people which were considered tokenistic shortly thereafter. All of this was also right on the heels of Black History Month in the United States, and honestly, I can't remember a time in history when Black Brits, South Africans, and Americans were in such community, or rather umgolo, together. The show's social media platforms made numerous subsequent attempts to popularize other terms and phrases associated with it, which it called Villa Vernacular, but none of the attempts permeated the South African and online lexicon quite like Emergency Blacks did. There were also black influencers who claimed that after having unsuccessfully applied for the show, they were approached by casting directors in an attempt to rectify the situation. Unfortunately, attempts to contact these influencers via social media and email to validate these claims went unanswered. Further research, however, led to an interview with the show's host prior to the premiere, where she confirmed that the previously specified closing date for entries had been waived and that entries for the series would remain open beyond the premiere. The show's premiere also had banner ads to aid the recruitment effort. This confirms that the initial 1-month entry window was not enough to secure the kind of contestants the show was after, and the premiere cast composition was in part due to logistic issues and not an attempt to re-implement the 1927 Immorality Act. Regardless, the extension was not widely communicated via media or Mnet's own platforms beyond the premiere, which created an opportunity for the Emergency Black narrative to perhaps unfairly take hold. One of the other aspects of the representation criticism which I found troubling was how the complaints did not seem to take into consideration the lack and misrepresentation of colored Indian and Asian South Africans. As previously mentioned, these groups are 12% of the population. However, the entire series did not feature any Asian contestants. Further, colored and Indian contestants were rarely a point of discussion in the media discourse regarding the show's racial representation, and when they were, it was often done with insufficient consideration or accuracy. CNN, for instance, in their reporting claimed Asad Boomgaard was black and Aaron Jafta was white, despite both being colored and even discussing their family histories and the culture with other islanders such as Xavier Hopp in early episodes.
What do you say?
So you fouldn't actually be have a brei.
What is that?
Brei is
a what?
It's brei. It's a breikie.
Like no.
There are people that praat soos dit and then like that. That's what I mean. So if you had a brei, you'll fit it.
Yeah, like Afrikaans accent vibe.
Yeah. My mom has like a solid like Northern Cape. My whole family, they speak like fucking plaasboertjies.
Really?
Ek kom nog van daar af en dan loop ons en dan praat ons verder. Zit in bergen. I was like, yes. I used to speak like that, so now I was like, and then I went to Afrikaans school and I learned it all.
Wait, Northern Cape?
Yeah, like Springbok.
UK outlets such as the BBC and Metro made the same error in their reporting. By March 2nd, 2 days after the premiere date, the show was still receiving widespread criticism regarding its cast composition and technical issues, prompting Mnet to eventually publish the following public apology via its social media accounts that afternoon. This apology, however, came too late as the reputational damage by that point was so severe that the show's main sponsor, Lotto Star, had officially withdrawn, and the show was unable to secure a replacement for the remaining 6 weeks. This was a significant loss as the main sponsors in formats such as these are often major contributors to the prize money, which in this case was 1 million rand. Numerous tweets went on to allege that the lack of diversity was in fact the usual standard for Mnet adaptations, highlighting how aforementioned shows such as The Bachelor South Africa only had white men in the titular role. By March 4th, 4 episodes had aired which still featured technical issues, and reports surfaced that the crew were quote living through a nightmare and that production was in a total flat spin. In an attempt to minimize the circulation of problematic episodes, the scheduled repeat broadcasts on Mnet had been cancelled, and none of the episodes were available via DSTV's catch-up service nor the previously mentioned early access feature, which had been suspended entirely. In Reflection, Transnational TV Formats, Jean K. Shalaby wrote that a format works as a platform on which to generate drama. However, Love Island South Africa was generating far more drama off-screen, and while some may argue that there's no such thing as bad publicity, the show's engagement on social media dropped drastically from thousands of interactions for the posts during its premiere and following day to just dozens later that week, which was a trend that continued for the rest of the show's run. The show continued to stumble along as the cast grew in subsequent episodes, both in size and fortunately some racial diversity. Eventually, in a bid to resuscitate positive interest in the show and save the format's reputation, the first spin-off, Unseen Bits, aired on Sunday, March 14th, right after the Sunday evening blockbuster, which for decades has been a staple and big audience draw for Mnet. A collection of more risque content, Unseen Bits was an attempt at a soft reboot to entice audience members by providing existing and potentially new ones, a more racially diverse cast, scintillating scenes, and a summary of the series' first 2 weeks now that most of the technical issues had been resolved and production was closer to a satisfactory standard. This soft reboot did contribute to some improved perceptions surrounding the show among audiences and critics, as on April 9th, just 2 days before the finale, Mnet announced that the show had become its most streamed content on the multi-choice DSTV app, ahead of some of its more popular offerings such as Grey's Anatomy and another adapted format series, Boer Soek 'n Vrou, which is based on ITV's 2001 Farmer Wants a Wife. This soft reboot did contribute to some improved perceptions surrounding the show among audiences and critics, as linear ratings during the 9:30 p.m. time slot the show had increased by 21% during March. By the finale, on April 11th, the show's cast had featured 26 contestants, of which 14 were white, 6 black, 4 colored, and 2 Indian. This was a transformation for the better, but only slight and still not exactly in alignment with South Africa's racial composition. However, I believe this composition is more aligned with Mnet's core viewer demographic, which historically has always skewed more towards wealthier white women. It's also worth considering that given Mnet's target audience, class most certainly played a role in the casting consideration. South Africa has 11 official languages, so a number of shows and series are multilingual. However, the typical Love Island audience would skew more towards middle and upper class, which in a South African context would be white and mostly speak English on a second, if not first language basis. In addition to growing up in one of the country's metropoles and of course been the beneficiary of tertiary education, which was almost exclusively reflected in the first season's cast. Something I also recall at the time, but was overshadowed by the racism allegations, was the lack of body diversity. The franchise has ignored criticism regarding this for years, but this new iteration in a country with a less typically European beauty standard, and at a time when curves were in vogue, was a prime opportunity to subvert that casting expectation, or rather practice. However, as with all other iterations, the cast was well under 30, conventionally attractive,
with butts bouncier than my debit orders.
In an ironic finish, no one had anticipated in the show's onset, its most popular couple was Timna from the original 10 and a later entry to the villa, Libongo Letu aka Libo Casa. This unexpected and unintentional development on the part of the producers ended up show's biggest pull factor, following the extensive accusations of racism and incompetence. A review of comments on Love Island South Africa's social media accounts suggests that the earlier mentioned microaggressions against Timna endured her among black audience members, particularly women who have suffered similar experiences. The arrival of Libo, who had exceptional romantic chemistry with her, also happened to take place at a time when Timna, who at just 26 was one of the oldest contestants and beginning to lose hope of finding a sustainable connection with the younger men in the villa who could not match her maturity and entertaining wit. The pair quickly became popular on set and screen with fans on social media, and eventually the show's production shipping them as Limna. Productions such as these also benefit greatly from the boost black audiences can lend, especially via platforms such as Black Twitter when trying to generate PR for their shows and go viral. So, not making more of an effort to understand and cater to this local audience still seems like a needlessly missed opportunity. Honestly, Limna were very cute and were a prime example of the strong characterization and multi-layered narratives that are typically utilized in scripted drama series to keep audiences engaged and rooting for certain characters and storylines being utilized within a non-scripted format. Limna's popularity resulted in the pair receiving over 53% of the 1.6 million votes that were cast by viewers in the show's last week, winning them the contest. It may also surprise South African audiences who were first or predominantly exposed to the franchise through our iteration that technical issues during the first week of a Love Island season are not the exception but rather the rule. Months after the South African season premiered, the UK version was criticized for technical issues with the ITV Hub and other streaming platforms during its premiere, and even received a fair amount of criticism for what was perceived as an unsatisfactory level of diversity among the new cast. It's also crucial to remember that these seasons were the first post-pandemic, so the crew were undoubtedly met with new and additional challenges to their usual schedules and methodology as a result of new production protocols. So, given these circumstances, I do believe some grace should be granted. Unfortunately, no one from the show's production ever made a statement or gave an interview on the casting process and subsequent choices, nor the technical issues from the first few weeks of episodes. So, for the time being, we can only make deductions informed by what transpired off and on screen. Format adaptations by their nature are a means of producing local content with international appeal and expertise that minimize risks such as the litany of technical issues which made it difficult for audiences of Love Island South Africa to suspend their disbelief and become immersed in the show. Shalaby suggested that adaptations can have a genuine local impact, but also warned that formats are successfully internationally only if they resonate with an audience in each and every market in which they air. A typical manner to ensure this resonance and cultural proximity is to ensure that the audience sees and hears themselves in the cast and stories portrayed on screen, which Love Island South Africa failed to at its outset and was slow to correct for the rest of the show's run. Considering South Africa's extensive history of racial segregation and oppression, replicating a British show down to the cast's racial composition for an African audience displayed a worryingly low level of contextual awareness, which is a crucial component of successful adaptation. There was also something still quite awkward and cynical in the original 10 and even rest of the season's 1-for-1 color casting. Other iterations of the franchise have done the same, but it does indicate that the South African producers aren't necessarily casting by who potentially may have good chemistry first, but rather race. The South African version also seemed to take this casting practice to an extreme by not just casting a white majority, but also ensuring that within that majority there was a 1-to-1 ratio between English men and women and Afrikaans. And it just seems a bit backward or behind that dating shows in places such as America and the UK have not only been more accurate in their racial representation, but they've also managed to ship more swirls than Nelson Mandela's Rainbow Nation. Regardless, the show was a rating success for Mnet despite, or even possibly partly due to all the controversy it garnered. However, this reputational damage remains a big source of international embarrassment for the Love Island brand, and I can't help but wonder if it's why there's still no signs of a South African second season yet, and what spooked the Nigerian iteration that was meant to follow out of existence.